it's extremely rewarding to know the impact that we are able to have on companies despite our size, right? So small business makes the world go around, and is truly in the fabric of the American dream that so many people talk about. And I think that's really important to celebrate, is these businesses that get up every single day and do what they do and make what they make. That is what makes our country so great. It's the opportunity to work in and around these types of businesses.
Let's discover what people are building in the greater Cleveland community. We are telling the stories of Northeast Ohio's entrepreneurs, builders, and those supporting them. Welcome to the Lay of the Land podcast, where we are exploring what people are building in Cleveland and throughout Northeast Ohio. I am your host, Jeffrey Stern, and today I had the real pleasure of speaking with Taylor Evans, founder and president of Rust Belt Recruiting, a leading and local manufacturing recruiting agency, which also hosts a kindred spirit podcast to Lay of the Land called Rust Belt Rundowns, where they are amplifying the stories of local manufacturing executives and leaders across Northeast Ohio. In our conversation today, we explore Taylor's path to entrepreneurship, grounded in his passion for economic and social impact, workforce development, and community revitalization. We'll unpack the rich, industrious history of the Rust Belt and Northeast Ohio, the 20th century hollowing out of that capacity, and the current signs of a manufacturing renaissance and return to skilled trades across manufacturing and light industrials. We talk about the difference between staffing and recruiting, the importance of brand, the power of business operating systems like the entrepreneurial operating system, and other macro topics like upskilling and reshoring, all through the lens of building Rust Belt recruiting and the lessons Taylor has acquired along the way. Outside of his work as a founder, Taylor is actively plugged in civically via the Council of Smaller Enterprises, the small business group of Greater Cleveland Partnership, as the chair of COSE's Small Business Caucus and vice chair of COSE's Board of Advisors, in addition to his work on the Talent Development Council of Team Neo. I personally really enjoyed hearing Taylor's perspective on the future of manufacturing in Ohio and Rust Belt recruiting's role to play within it. So please enjoy our conversation after a brief message from our sponsor. Lay of the Land is brought to you by Impact Architects and by 90. As we share the stories of entrepreneurs building incredible organizations in Cleveland and throughout Northeast Ohio, Impact Architects has helped hundreds of those leaders, many of whom we have heard from as guests on this very podcast, realize their own visions and build these great organizations. I believe in Impact Architects and the people behind it so much that I have actually joined them personally in their mission to help leaders gain focus, align together, and thrive by doing what they love. If you too are trying to build great, Impact Architects is offering to sit down with you for a free consultation or provide a free trial through 90, the software platform that helps teams build great companies. If you're interested in learning more about partnering with Impact Architects or by leveraging 90 to power your own business, please go to ia.layoftheland.fm. The link will also be in our show notes. When was the moment you knew you wanted to become an entrepreneur?
So there was like the young me and then the adult me, right? So when I was a kid, I was maybe 14 or 15 and wanted to go to Chicago to visit my aunt.
Yeah.
I live in Southeast PA, grew up there, and my parents were like, we'll get a job to pay for your flight out there. And my best friend and I looked at each other and said, well, no, we're going to start a mowing business, right? We're not going to get a job. We're going to start a business. So his name, Gregory Lord, my name being Taylor, we started Lord and Taylor Lawn Care, and had a lot of fun doing that, right? For a couple years. And I don't know how many accounts we got up to, 12 or 15, enough to make the summer money that we needed to.
Yeah.
But that was kind of my first foray into starting something, and really tried to run it like a business. Had two of our friends working for us, had shirts, like really.
You took it seriously.
Yeah, trying to professionalize it a little bit. And then, when I was an adult, after going through a couple different jobs and realizing that I'm borderline unemployable because does not play well with others or whatever, does not work well for others is maybe it for me. I needed the freedom to be an entrepreneur. And so at some point in 2017, and even leading up to that, I knew I was getting the itch. And we, in October of 2017, found out on a Thursday night that my wife was pregnant. And an hour later, she said to me, I was sitting there complaining about my job, really mature of me after she just found out she's carrying a baby. She was like, just quit your job. Let's do it. Let's start a business. And I was like, whoa, really? And so the next day I went in, put in my 2 weeks notice, and off and running since then. And Rust Belt Recruiting is what came out of that.
Did you have...
And a baby.
Yeah.
and a baby. So Mila.
Wow. Did you have a sense of directionally where you were running when you set off running?
Yeah. To show how clear the vision was, I was either going to start a coffee shop, was what I was originally thinking. But when I did the math on what it is to build out and stand up a coffee shop and sell a lot of $3, $4, $5 cups of coffee compared to starting my own recruiting business, made a lot more sense to go the other route and get a hold of a used laptop and a LinkedIn account and a cell phone, and you're off and running as a recruiter, which isn't to diminish what recruiters do, but in terms of operational costs.
You got to sell a lot of cups of coffee.
You got to sell a lot of cups of coffee, and kudos to all of the people out there. I had done my diligence. I went to the Specialty Coffee Association of America or whatever, had their show in Atlanta. Which was awesome, by the way. I don't know if you'll ever find yourself in the town where they are hosting it, but I drank 10 shots of espresso because everyone's and it's the best espresso you're gonna ever have because it's the Super Bowl of coffee.
Right.
So it was an awesome experience, but again, did my diligence, and once the caffeine wore off, I realized probably needed to go more the route of something that could actually sustain this growing family that I had.
Sure. But even recruiting in and of itself can be quite broad in scope.
Yeah.
How do you begin to narrow the aperture?
Yeah. So, originally the Evans Group of Ohio was the name of the business, which sounds like an insurance agency. And, I remember one day I was sitting, it's visceral. I can feel myself sitting at our coffee table with a notepad next to me. I'm 2 or 3 weeks into this and just figuring out how to get a client to get the business going.
Yeah.
And I wrote down, something came into my head, and I wrote down the word Rust Belt Recruiting. And I just looked over at that a couple times, and I just kept looking at it, and I was like, oh, that's really good. Right? That's a good name. I like that. I can build something around that. And before I was at a recruiting agency for 1.5 years before I started my own. And before that, I was actually at a manufacturer. And so I knew when you're starting out in business, unless you have an ingenious idea, I just wanted to make sure that I could at least put my part of the pie on the table for, again, supporting our family.
Yeah.
So if you read any publication, if you know anything about industry here in Northeast Ohio, manufacturing is integral to that. And that skilled workforce is a tremendous shortage. So I said, well, I can probably create a nice white glove experience for recruiting and attracting skilled workforce for regional manufacturers. And so I set out to do it. And that was the impetus of it, right? Is I just wanted to start something that mattered and did impact-driven work, really mission-based work. And I really do believe that a strong manufacturing economy in Northeast Ohio is integral to the overall region's viability and stability and, hopefully continued renaissance. And so I have 4 kids now, and for those 4 kids to stick around, like I hope they want to be around here, at least some of them in the long run. I want to feel like I played my part in helping regional manufacturers to be better, which creates better lives, families, communities, so on and so forth. And again, hopefully selfishly, my kids stick around as well.
Right. I mean, that industrial heritage, it's deep rooted within the history of this place. I don't know how top of mind it is, if you just even rewind 100 years, that Northeast Ohio is accounting for half of the world's rubber production, a majority of steel, oil, just the building of things is in this place. It's in the bones.
Yeah. People sometimes say, if you could go back in history, when would you go to? And I always say the Industrial Revolution. I just think it has to be such a fascinating time period to observe in our country as we, grew and, just astronomical growth, over that time period. And Cleveland was in the center of that. Obviously, Rockefeller is probably the biggest name that came out of here. And, you got Carnegie 2 hours west and so many of these other big names in the region. But I think that's cool. I think that, and I'm not advocating, I don't know if they were the best employers, but I will say that they laid the foundation for, the growth and development of our country. Really. I mean, they were integral to that. And at one point, I think around 1930, I think Cleveland was the wealthiest city in the country, right? And we had Millionaires Row along Euclid and so many things. So yeah, I want to be part of, we always say with Rust Belt recruiting, putting the shine back on the region, right? And we really do want that. We want this region to thrive. This is a good area, and a lot of good communities make up Northeast Ohio. And we really believe in the impact of our work. And so at this point, I'm grateful that I wrote down that name on that notepad, Rust Belt Recruiting, and it led us into that really just pure manufacturing focus, because I really believe in the importance of the work that we do. It's not just, how big of a business can I build to make lots of money for myself and my colleagues. It's like, how much impact can we make, right? How much of a difference can we make for the companies that we support? And the rest, all the fruits of your labor tend to follow if you do good work.
How did you find your first big break?
Yeah. I've been very open with my story, right? So in late January of 2018, I stopped drinking. I had a bad relationship with alcohol. And for those first 3 months of the business was also my last 3 months drinking. And when you've just stopped drinking, you start to focus your energy and efforts on something positive and productive. And so I had this client in Northwest Ohio who was maybe my second or third account and just needed welders and general laborers, and started working on those roles for them. Probably filled maybe 6 of them over a couple months, which is nothing to phone home about, but they were seeing the quality of my work. And that child that was the impetus of starting the business, Neela, she was born on Father's Day 2018 on a Sunday night. And there's no paternity leave when you're self-employed. I think I was on the phone, like in the lobby the next morning, just got to pay for this stuff. And so I think by that Thursday, so, probably came home from the hospital Tuesday or Wednesday, probably Tuesday, Wednesday, being the bouncy person that I am, I was probably sitting on my hands like, okay, this is my paternity leave. And by Thursday, I was out at a lunch meeting again. And I got a call from Dave, the HR leader there. And he said, you've been doing great work for us. We really like you. And because of the steel tariffs that President Trump has put in at this point, our products are going through the roof. And so we are, experiencing just exorbitant order volume and growth, please help us build a third shift. And so it was probably 86 job openings. And Dave was like, I think, we'd like to have your agency help us with this. I was like, well, you got the whole agency on the phone. Built a team up pretty quickly as I could, and tackled that project. And it was kind of the launching point for, being able to attract and hire team members and grow our business. And I'm really grateful. For me, that was a God moment, right? That we took the leap and started a business, not knowing what the road ahead was going to be. And then we kind of told ourselves, hey, we've got 7-8 months to get this figured out. And first day back to work after she was born, I got my breakthrough moment. And for me, as a person of faith, like, that really is a God moment where it was like, you did it, well done, way to trust the process. And, a lot of life happened in those 7-8 months, a lot of life change, a lot of, getting better with myself and changing who and what I am. And that was a foundational moment in my life, and, a foundational season to what changed the trajectory of our lives, which was, I'm beyond grateful for that.
Yeah. That's powerful.
Yeah. Yeah.
Without knowing at the time the precise path ahead of you, I know today, from a place of retrospect, you've made a pretty clear distinction between recruiting and staffing.
Yeah.
And I'd love to understand your evolution of, thinking on that and ultimately, how you've positioned Rust Belt Recruiting to focus on the recruiting side.
Yeah. Yeah. So in outside agency recruiting, third-party recruiting, however you want to characterize it, there's really 3 arenas. Right? You got temporary staffing for generally lower skilled roles. You've got, there's also contract staffing for more professional roles, but you've got your kind of temporary jobs, you've got professional recruiting, and you've got executive search, right? Which is like retained VP and C-level, C-suite. Professional recruiting is usually just-in-time recruiting, like, hey, we got someone leaving or someone left, we need this job filled, and now.
Yeah.
So without kind of unpacking all 3 of those buckets, really what I saw as a gap in the market when I started my business was a lot of these, we call them blue collar, but these are skilled professionals. They have just as much skill as you and me, right? Like a CNC programmer they're running $250,000 to $500,000 machines. Like, I would break that thing if they let me push the buttons on it.
Yeah. That
person is a skilled and trained professional at what they do, just like I am as a salesman or a business owner, right? Just whatever but we've neglected that population, and we've pushed those roles over to the temporary staffing bucket where it's like, hey, do you want to leave your full-time job to come and be tried out over here over 90 days? We might hire you. They're like, no, like I'm very good at what I do. I'm not, even if I bet on myself and can be tried out by you, like, no, I'm beyond that. Right. And so we've just commoditized the way we treat the skilled workforce of our region. And that was a gap in the market that I saw. So again, I was like, okay, we're going to provide professional recruiting services, more high-end, consultative, premium mindset, like how we work and interface with a client, and provide constructive and quality feedback on the roles that we are working on for them. We really want to be like more of an engaged partner. We don't want to just be a resume mill. We don't want to play this as a race to the bottom. My value proposition when I talk to a client is not, I will have you 3 resumes in 3 days, which some companies try to do, which if you hear that as a manufacturer, run, right? Like, just run. Because like, unless they're like super niche to just exactly the type of role that you're asking them to work on for you, they're not going to understand and vet and qualify people the way that you want it to be done. What we promise is a good quality consultative search where we're going to provide you feedback on exactly what we're seeing and hearing from the candidates, because sometimes some of these roles even run stale. Someone has been in this role for 25 years. Jerry, our maintenance manager, is just loyal to the bone to our owner, and he's finally leaving, and there's all this institutional knowledge, but through no fault of anyone's, also wage stagnation might have caught up, and what Jerry was getting paid might not be market rate for what you need this person to be now. And we need clients who are willing to hear and at least, process that feedback internally. We can't make magic happen with someone else's livelihood just because we want them to. But when we have a partner that really wants to, trust us to provide that feedback and hear it and work with us on it, we're able to get meaningful traction on the role, right? And one of the more impactful things I've heard in 6.5 years since starting Rust Belt is, manufacturers, one of their foundational elements is continuous improvement, CI, right? Yet most manufacturers haven't applied principles of continuous improvement to their talent acquisition processes. So how can we come in and help you take a look at what you're doing? If you're doing 7 interviews for a production level role, I don't care what the role. I don't think you should be doing 7 for an executive role. Putting that aside, if you think that is right, then we're not going to be right. But if you're open to hearing how maybe we could streamline this to 2 and rework the process and still get a lot of the same information and whatever it is you need out of that, we can work and be your partner. So we really want to almost err more towards consultants than resume mill. At the end of the day, we're not the agency who comes in and promises you, exorbitant resumes or wants to just get that 80% resume in front of you, hoping they don't notice the 20% that's missing. We really want to hit the target with just a few select candidates. And I think generally our clients find that refreshing, right? That we don't come in and masquerade as something that we're not. Right. We'd rather tell you no about taking the work than yes and hope it works out, if that makes sense.
Sure. Wow, a lot of threads to pull in.
Yeah.
One of the kind of more in the backdrop to the work you're doing, you mentioned this tension at the beginning of what you were talking about there between just the nomenclature of blue collar and skilled workers. Mm-hmm. And I think that kind of falls within this narrative we've begun to hear of the challenge manufacturers face with regards to talent generally. And how many workers, maybe many young workers, don't have the best opinion of working or coming into work in skilled trades, manufacturing, and maybe parents' perception of going to vocational, kind of schooling work as less desirable. At least there's a narrative around that.
Absolutely.
At the same time, I've heard folks begin to use the term tool belt generation and kind of a resurgence of interest in this kind of work. How do you reconcile these things? What's actually going on?
Yeah. So, Morning Brew had a data point a few weeks ago that said, the overall movement towards the trades and trades education is up 16%. So it's fantastic. The drum has to continue to be beat, right? And we have to make sure that the high school guidance counselor in these school districts all across the country aren't just measuring themselves on did one of our kids go to college or not? If they didn't go to college, it was failure, right? Did our students have a next step out of a high school lineup? That's success, right? As long as they're not going to jail. But if the next step is the military, that's cool. If the next step is a career, that's cool. If the next step is college, that's cool. But treat them equally. Don't treat college as the end all be all. So the overall sentiment, I do think, is shifting. And I do think the pressures of the world today, I think what we're going to see from some generations that are coming up is they might not embrace them the same way that we've been conditioned to. And I think that will lead people to saying, for example, not to say there's not pressure in, a job, being on a production floor. But at the end of the day, if you're able to go in, clock in your 8-9 hours and then go home and you don't have an email address that's dinging your phone, or you're just able to leave it behind and you're able to provide a quality life for your family. And manufacturing, as I say this out loud, might almost become the source of work-life balance that everyone's looking for. Like, hey, I can do my job, clock in, clock out. And a lot of manufacturers are having to make some adjustments to make their workplace more attractive. So I've seen many different iterations. Most manufacturers offer overtime at some level. They need the work done. They need the throughput. But if manufacturers are willing to say, once you hit your 40 hours in the week, if you don't want to work any more than that, that's your choice. Overtime, if you have to work 6.5 days a week at 12 hours a pop, manufacturing is going to struggle to attract people. But again, I've actually seen some shifts in how companies are approaching overtime and in the overall day-to-day involvement in their jobs.
Yeah, really interesting. So take us through the evolution of Rust Belt recruiting. What are the chapters in that story?
Yeah, so I kind of told you the first chapter, right? And that was 2018 and riding high and really growing. And over the years, we've had multiple different iterations of the business. We actually did offer temporary staffing for about 2 years in there. We gave it a shot, wanted to see if maybe it opened doors to clients where we could climb the ladder, so to say, within the organization and then work on other roles than just the, true entry level. But again, was kind of trying to run two business models at once.
Yeah.
And eventually it just stopped after a board meeting. And so I'll always remember that, just as a quick rabbit hole. I'll always remember that board meeting. There's an accomplished entrepreneur here in Cleveland who was on my board at the time, Dan Rose. He's an EOS coach now and was our implementer. But Dan was on the board and he said, "How do you make money?" And I'm looking at him like, like you're smart enough. This is not a complex business model. He was like, "Well, no, where within your business do you actually make money?" Once we unpacked that, and I got honest with myself that temporary staffing was not making us money.
Yeah.
I walked back into the office. The team's sitting there. We were in a hallway conference room. I walked in. I was like, "Hey, effective immediately, we no longer offer temporary staffing." And someone's like on the phone with a candidate, like, what should I say to this person? I was like, ask them if they want a full-time job, I don't know. But, we quickly unraveled it. 2 or 3 months, got to get people off the books or whatever. But yeah, that world. So I'm very entrepreneurial. In fact, sometimes fall victim to the shiny objects, as many visionaries do. But at the end of the day, we've had different iterations, different seasons. And I'm really excited about the 2024 version of the team. That's been a good one, but we've gone through, again, just many different seasons, and COVID was certainly a wild ride, especially, from mid 2021 through mid 2022, like things were hot then. It was kind of wild. And that was kind of the restocking of the cupboards for businesses, industrial businesses, and many other industries as well. But last year, for the last even year and a half, the market's been a little more. It just hasn't been as hot, and so your companies are being a little bit more diligent with their hiring, which I'm all for. But that was a wild season as well. So we've seen a lot of different things, right? Even in 6.5 years in business, we saw, without making it a political thing, right? We saw Trump's economy. We saw Biden's economy. We saw COVID, right? Spanning across both of them. And now we're in an election year again, right? And I do think one thing that continues to hold manufacturing together right now through all the economic turbulence is the emphasis on reshoring and just the overall awareness of manufacturers, how hard it is to reassemble a quality workforce, that manufacturing leaders, CFOs and owners and CEOs are looking at their P&L and saying, we're willing to give up margin right now before we give up the ship. And in this case, the ship meaning the team, right? Like we're not going to, we're not going to just offload people to try to rebuild it in 2 years because it's so hard to do that, right? So that's been a huge factor as well.
To the degree that, most businesses are influenced by these external forces, political cycles, ebbs and flows in the economy. How have you thought about the positioning of Rust Belt recruiting to be resilient, in the face of these different hot, cold, however you might describe them, cycles?
Well, the beauty of being a small business, and again, I have every time we have a board meeting, my wife and I look at each other and say, like, how are we so lucky to have the board that we do and the people that choose to pour into us? And we had this conversation, I don't know, sometime in the last year and a half. But there's a local business leader, Jason Therian, who owns Thunder Tech, started and built that, said, you got to create your own economy. You get to create your own economy. We're not Amazon. This isn't like, the big container ship barreling down the Suez Canal. Like, we can turn on, not a dime, but we can turn pretty quickly. Yeah. About as close to turning on a dime as you could get.
You got a trim tab.
Yeah. Just like, make the changes. And so we are absolutely 110% invested in manufacturing, but there's room to pivot within or pursue manufacturers that, are growing, because even when an economy is, stagnant or contracting or whatever it is, we aren't, there's always going to be markets that are growing, and there's always going to be things that are emerging and on the uptick. So we just have to pivot to those areas, and being smaller and more nimble allows us to do so. So resilience is simply a mindset. How are we going to be resilient? How are we going to survive and hopefully thrive through the ups and downs? And for us, we, again, benefit from being a smaller business.
As you've gone through these seasons, Colin, one thing I know you've also been quite intentional about, going all the way back to the name itself, is the whole idea of brand.
Mm-hmm. So
I'd love to understand how you think about brand.
Yeah.
And then I'd love to, kind of run the parallels of the podcast, Rust Belt Rundown that you operate, and kind of how that plays into the fold.
Yeah. So I am a sales and marketing guy. Like, that is who and what I am through and through. And so I always wanted, to build a really strong brand, a brand can also, when we go back to resilience, a brand can weather the storm. A brand can go through seasons if the brand is strong and you have the right, reputation, and you do things the right way and still get the respect of the people that you work with. And we strive daily for that, to do things the right way and earn our customers' respect, and be, whether the customer is a candidate or a client. So, I really set out from day one to build awareness with our brand. And so when we were doing that, unless you're in the manufacturing industry, no one wants to follow a manufacturing recruiting company on LinkedIn or social channels just to see what jobs we post, right? So we try to create a brand that is engaging to the people that we choose to follow us, regardless of why they follow us. Like, I would want to create a brand where you follow us, even if you're not in manufacturing, but you're like, I love what these guys put out. I always am learning something or enjoying what they put up. So we love to show the positive culture that we try to run first and foremost. We are champions of the industry that we serve rather than just ourselves, right? So we are talking about manufacturing. We're celebrating Northeast Ohio. Like, we have pillars that are important to us, and we really champion those. Like, yes, occasionally you'll see us promote a job opening that we have. Might just be a good fit and want to get it out there. But our channels are not designed, other than our website, the job openings page. Our channels are about revitalization and growth and the region and manufacturing and the economy. And so at the end of the day, we created something that's worth following for, a number of different people. And that's awesome. And we've tried some fun stuff with it too. One that I always think back on is, for like a short period of time, I would always send out a riddle to my clients. Like, if we had a touch base call the next day, like a standing one, I would always send them a riddle the night before, almost to make sure they would show up for the call the next day to get the answer to the riddle. And eventually we started using that as social content. It has nothing to do with what we do, but people loved it, right? Even my one aunt, the aunt in Chicago that I went to visit when I was 14, she was like, I love following your company for the, of course, because it's mine, but, I want to see that weekly riddle, whatever it is. So, making the brand fun, engaging, and more than just the product is important. And so when it comes to our podcast, we had an intern in the summer of 2020 who was like, I want to start a podcast for here. Said, okay, like, let's give it a shot. Let's see where it goes. And I think we've done 73 or 74 episodes now. We release about 2 a month. And it's really a great way to promote people doing things in Northeast Ohio that are worth knowing about. Yeah. And so, we've brought clients on before, we've brought prospects, but we've brought on, interesting local and regional leaders who have nothing to do with what we do, right? But it's also a great way to celebrate these individuals who are making a difference in the region, get them involved with the Rust Belt family, get them kind of connected to our work, even if they're not. So, one of the more fun ones was, I think you've had him on yours, but Mayor Bibb. We were in Playhouse Square a couple months ago, and he walks by and he's like, hey, how you doing? Good to see you. I'm still keeping up on the podcast, right? And whether he was just using flattery or not, it's fun to have that connection with him, right? And there's examples like that where we've been able to bring in, again, leaders who are able to share their perspective. And, again, one of the more fun ones is at the end of every episode, we also ask, what's your favorite restaurant? And so, also get a bunch of good spots to go try out. But my best friend is our host, Paul O'Connor. And it's also really something fun to do with him. And, he's down in Columbus, but he does this for us twice a month. And it's he's really good at what he does. And it's really a good representation of our company. And, last thing I'll say, when it comes to Paul, that's a perfect example where I didn't want to create the Taylor Evans brand, right? It's called Rust Belt Recruiting. It's not called Taylor Evans Recruiting. And I didn't want to be the face of the podcast, because I didn't want it to be the Taylor Evans show. I wanted to be the Rust Belt Rundown. And so there's been little intentional steps to curate something that is bigger and more than just me and my business. And, I've had to come to terms along the way, especially with how avid of a networker I am, that myself and Rust Belt are going to be inextricably linked, but I don't want myself to just purely be the end all be all. We're onboarding a new business development guy right now. And I said, I want people to think of you when they think of Rust Belt, when things happen, right? That you're their guy, that you're their solution. It's not about me. So I've always wanted to curate something that was beyond just myself.
Yeah. if there does exist a kindred fraternal storytelling exercise to lay of the land, it is Rust Belt Rundown. I've loved following what you guys are doing.
Thank you so much.
And I think we just need to tell more of those stories because there are not enough people who know about them.
Yeah, like, he just popped into my head. One of our shared guests, Brian Cruz with Sergeant Clean Car Wash. Like, Brian's an awesome story. He's an awesome human being. He is Sergeant Clean. And, the way his business has grown and exploded is strategic, but it's also a representation of him and his mindset for the community. No one thinks like a car wash is going to be a cornerstone to our community. But I'll tell you what, like during COVID, ironically, my daily loop just to get out of the house with my daughter that we talked about was we would just drive, go through the car wash, got a friendly wave from the people that were there, go grab a coffee from the coffee shop and go home. It just got us out of the house for 15 or 30 minutes. But that friendly wave that you get every time you go to Sergeant Clean and the way they've kind of embraced that Chick-fil-A mindset of like customer service and friendliness, and it's awesome. So, again, where like a guy like Brian is someone that we should be celebrating in this region who is a good business leader. He's giving back. He's doing a good thing and creates a good product. That's what we want to celebrate. And I think you're the exact same way. So the respect for our podcasts is mutual.
Well, I appreciate that.
Yeah.
But enough about it. Enough about that.
Yeah.
Lay of the Land is brought to you by John Carroll University's Buller College of Business, widely recognized as one of the top business schools in the region. As we've heard time and time again from entrepreneurs here on Lay of the Land, many of whom are proud alumni of John Carroll University, success in this ever-changing world of business requires a dynamic and innovative mindset, deep understanding of emerging technologies and systems, strong ethics, leadership prowess, acute business acumen, all qualities nurtured through the Buller College of Business. With 4 different MBA programs of study spanning professional, online, hybrid, and 1-year flexible, the Buller College of Business provides flexible timelines and various class structures for each MBA track, including online, in-person, hybrid, and asynchronous, all to offer the most effective options for you, including the ability to participate in an elective international study tour, providing unparalleled opportunities to expand your global business knowledge by networking with local companies overseas and experiencing a new culture. The career impact of a Buller MBA is formative and will help prepare you for this future of business and get more out of your career. To learn more about John Carroll University's Buller MBA programs, please go to business.jcu.edu. The Buller College of Business is fully accredited by AACSB International, the highest accreditation a college of business can have. Well, let's see. When you turn an eye more towards the future, what has you most excited?
Well, I'm excited that we're getting traction on talking about manufacturing being a thing again.
Yeah.
I have a 12-year-old son, Cam, and I hope that Cam knows that a career in manufacturing would be awesome if he chooses to do it. I'm hearing rumblings of architect right now, but cool, right? Still work around something where you build something that matters, right? So if you're going to be an architect, that's really cool, right? And you're going to design some beautiful structures, and those will be homes or businesses or whatever. My hope for the future is that we don't just become a nation of zombies, right? That we keep that interpersonal connection. And I do believe workplaces are integral to that, right? I do believe going and interfacing, just like we're recording this podcast together in person. And we talked about it, like, feeding off each other, reading body language, creating that connection. Yeah, we could do this via Zoom. It would have been easier to do it that way. That's not what makes the world go around. It's community and it's connection and it's, living in service for others. And my hope is, as silly as this sounds, if we get traction with people going to industrial settings and workplaces, and they feel that fulfillment of making something every day, and they get to connect with coworkers and collaborate and support one another, that's a good thing. So, I don't want to upset the remote work crowd too much with this, right? But, in the world that I live in, which again is manufacturing, it goes beyond the work they do. It's the connections they create, the relationships that they have. Our world needs that. Otherwise, you get in your own little silos and echo chambers, and it can be a very lonely place without connection. And so the next generation loves their screens. I think even ours does too. We're already trapped by them. But if you can get away from those screens and get in person with someone for, throughout the course of the day, I think that's my hope for the next generation. And again, I also going a bit of a different direction. I have a lot of hope for Northeast Ohio.
Yeah.
Right. I think we're seeing more regional collaboration. I think we are a valuable region. I think our region is going to become progressively more attractive as, look at the winter we just had. It really wasn't that harsh. And whatever you want to say about it, like there are evolutions happening to our climate. And so Cleveland could actually be very well positioned in 50 years from now, and Northeast Ohio and the Great Lakes as an attractive destination, and people will start coming back here and revitalize this area. So, and the investments are being made right now, right? It's happening. The wheels are starting to turn. We got to get some of our communities elevated, and the work that they're looking to do downtown along the river and the lakefront are, generational changes to our communities, but they're good. They will continue to attract people here in hopefully industry, right? Chicken and the egg type thing, but more and more industry will come here when the population's here and we can provide a reliable workforce.
While there is this boon to industry coming back here, and I think we both agree major net positive for this region, for the whole Midwest, at the same time, the whole industrial workforce is undergoing some significant changes at the same time, even separate from the perception people have of this kind of work, with all the technological advancements and automation that are making their way into the space. Have you guys thought about that and the consequences for people who can actually work in this industry?
Yeah. So a couple things to that, right? A lot of different ways to go with it, but I am one of the recruiters that is a big fan of robots.
Yeah.
And those robots that can replace roles that otherwise may be hard for a company to fill. Robots don't get hangovers. Robots can run 24/7.
I don't love the terminology, but Buckminster Fuller call it, energy slaves.
Yeah. So they can do the job with consistent quality over and over and over again. And the reason I'm a champion for these is if people aren't going to, the same people who complain about the robots are the same people that are probably not taking the jobs in front of them, right? The robots can make the product and do the work that others won't. And so at the end of the day, I don't want to become a nation dependent on robots, but someone's got to service that robot. Someone's got to take care of that thing. And these are the advanced manufacturing jobs that we create with innovation, right? These innovations will come, and then the jobs to serve them will follow. And so we continue to track unemployment rate as if it matters anymore. Like my viewpoint is that is a moot data point from here on out. It's going to stay low, 2.5% to 4% here on out. Regardless, it's low. What we're going to start to see is, the labor force participation rate as a more meaningful indicator. How many people are opting into work? And so that number usually fluctuates. It doesn't fluctuate this much, but the peak was around 67%. We tend to run at this point around 62 in some decimal.
Yeah.
And so as the gig economy and fractional work and all of these things and people's ability to create their own, path continues to grow, we are going to see that number probably stay a little lower. So, the involvement with our workforce or continuing to get people involved in roles is going to be huge, but also making sure that we adjust to the realities of what is coming. And, hopefully companies are in a position to make the investments that they need to into, let's call it rather than energy slaves, let's call it alternative workforce. Which is, again, those automations and those robots. There's nothing wrong with, these machines being out there as long as they're creating a job with it that services and maintains this equipment, also creates jobs to make said machines. There's a lot to go with it as well.
Yeah. Well, I want to, ground this back in the business because it's fascinating. We could talk about that for forever. One of the things you mentioned earlier on is EOS, the Entrepreneurial Operating System, for those tuning in. Are you familiar with the Bader-Meinhof effect by chance?
I am not, so I'm about to learn something.
Well, also known as the frequency illusion.
Okay.
And it refers to the idea that once you are aware of something, you just see it everywhere.
Sure.
And EOS to me is this thing.
Yes.
I didn't know about it until a few years ago when I actually met Chris Snyder, who came on the podcast here through Impact Architects, I think episode 98. But then it became astonishing to me the degree to which it just appeared everywhere. And I'll run through just founders from Lay of the Land that I can think of. I made a note here. Gordon Daly from Boxcast, Nick Dadas from University Teas and Sisu Lifestyle, Mary Cohen from NCS Credit, Azadeh Hardiman from Level 20, Jim Pashak from Bravo Wellness, which was acquired by Medical Mutual, TJ Gliha from Journey Wealth, Brendan Anderson from Scaleco. The list genuinely goes on. Why has it resonated so broadly and then deeply with what it is that you are doing?
Yeah. And before we jump into that, you left off Acton Academy for Nick Dadas.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Which ironically, we are now sending our kids to next year.
Wow.
So yeah, we're moving them into the Dadas' school and hopefully fostering an entrepreneurial spirit in our kids. But that aside, EOS is a powerful tool. It needs to be a priority. And even in my own business, I've seen us let it fall to the background at times. So 2021, we used Dan Rose, who I mentioned earlier, as our implementer and decided to put this in, created 2 or 3 jobs almost immediately from it. We realized, we were building our accountability chart and realized we had too many people doing 2 or 3 jobs, which is the nature of a small business. And so we made those investments and we grew and we ran it really well for a little while. And then I would say we got off track and we've made a renewed focus since the fall to get it going again. And, we now have an internal team member who we're like, we got our person for that integrator seat. And I was actually just talking to our podcast host, Paul O'Connor, yesterday. His company, his day job down in Columbus, they're putting in EOS. And I was just saying to him how important a good integrator is to the business. So EOS is it's a powerful tool that lets you address issues in real time and really think through how you want to grow your business. But when done right, I know EOS and the EOS community has raving fans. Raving would be an understatement about the impact that EOS has had on them and their business.
Let's kind of like paint a picture of what this looks like in practice. So talk us through just some of the client relationships that you've had, and what are the impacts of a placement, how you think about the outcomes long term, and more like the tactics of soup to nuts. How does this actually work? What does this look like?
Yeah. So Rust Belt as a whole.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, when we're able to kind of bring on a client in the right way, we are really trying to enmesh into, be an extension of their team from day one. We are getting to know not only the HR person or the owner or whoever walked us through the door, but honestly, the hiring managers in a meaningful way, really understand who and what they are as an employer and what they value in an individual, because it's our job to be able to communicate that. Just because, for example, someone's resume says on it, welder, well, that's a huge spectrum of skill and capability.
Yep.
So we need to understand, we need to be able to say, this is what the culture there's like. This is exactly what type of welding you're doing. This is like the certs you might need, certifications, or the ability level, MIG, TIG, flux, whatever. So at the end of the day, we have to really be able to operate as an extension of them. And frankly, while we don't misrepresent ourselves, and maybe the people just aren't paying attention, we almost take it as a compliment when, our clients, hear from the candidates, oh, I didn't know that person didn't work here. I actually thought that the person recruiting me was a member of your team. And it's like, well, no, they're outsourced, but they know our business so well, and they are so reliable and trusted that, it feels that way to the candidate. So, we want to build long-lasting relationships. We want to only fill jobs that really feel like we're adding value for you. We're solution-oriented is one of our 5 core values. That's super important to us. So we want to always be kind of coming in with big eyes when we're talking to a company and saying like, this is some best practices we've seen. This is how we can do things better. So again, kind of like what we were talking about earlier in the conversation, we come in and add value from day one. And again, also just figuring out other ways to add value, listening like where they're having pain points, just like any service provider should be. How can I add more value or more connection? So, just a few weeks ago, was onboarding a new client, heard what they do, said, hey, I got a guy about an hour and a half from here that I think you should meet. He'll be going there in like a week, and they're just going to figure out, can we work together? And I have nothing to gain other than positive sentiment from both parties that I put them together. Nothing more than that, right? But at the end of the day, being able to provide value beyond just the roles that you fill or the searches that you do is, I think, integral to being good for the business. So whenever we've brought in business development people in our organization, I'm an avid networker. I'm blessed to know a lot of people in the area and in the region, and specifically the business community. We're always saying to that person, hey, if you hear that your client is like struggling with something, if you have a connection for them, great. Otherwise, bring it back to me. Like, let me help you be like, oh my gosh, yeah, I need ABC. I just had this last night, right? Like, my wife's in Florida right now, and I was texting about an intro that I had made to me. And I was like, it would, for most people, the connection that I could make, they wouldn't have had it or thought of it. And her response was like, of course you do, right? Like, of course you have someone to introduce them to. And, but that feels good. That feels like you can be valuable to people beyond just the day-to-day thing that you're doing for them. In this case, for us, it's recruiting, but, being able to leave a conversation or meet people and do something for them, that's a really good feeling. Yeah. So sorry, I took us down a little bit of a rabbit hole there, but
it's all good. I mean, to layer on to it, you've mentioned impact, value. I'd be curious what success actually looks like practically, and what is the actual impact you hope to have? Yeah,
so that's an easy one for me. Is Ralph Waldo Emerson usually gets the credit for the poem Success. and look it up. It's short but good. And there's a line in there that says, to know that one life has breathed easier because you have lived, this is to have succeeded. And that's it, right? Like to know that you made someone else's life just marginally better. And I try to do that in a way more than just one life, right? Like my goal is lots of lives, LOL, lots of lives, lay of the land. But, you know, at the end of the day, I want to positively impact as many lives as possible through my business and the platform that I'm blessed to have as a business owner. And I recognize the value of that. And I try to leverage that through the organizations that I'm a member of here in the greater Cleveland area and beyond. But if I can make someone's life a little easier or, you know, enrich it in some way, that's it for me, right? And usually the universe conspires if you do good for others.
I think you've already mentioned some of the ways through which your personal growth has run parallel to the growth of Rust Belt through fatherhood, through the adversity of relinquishing alcohol at the onset. How do you feel? How do you reflect on your personal growth and journey? And what are some of the more salient lessons that you carry with you?
Yeah. At the end of the day, it's never too late to change, you know, and I'm really grateful that my relationship with alcohol, which I was having a lot of fun, right? For a while, I was just stuck in that post-college, still just kind of kept the party going a little bit. But I got off that merry-go-round at 29 years old. I've met people 59, 69, 79 years old who are just trying to address their relationship with that. So to that topic or that point, I'm grateful. I got a full life ahead of me and continue to. I think there's the opportunity to create the life you want. And I recognize sometimes there's built-in mechanisms to accelerate that for some versus others. But, you know, there's a quote from a Civil War general, you may be whatever you resolve to be, right? And my brother went to Virginia military where that quote is in there. And there's truth to that, right? Like I sometimes laugh at myself that one day I just started telling people I was a manufacturing recruiter, because that's the truth of it. Like one day I just was like, hey, yeah, I'm a manufacturing recruiter. And eventually someone was like, okay, cool. Yeah, we'll give you a shot. And then I got lots of shots and now we're where we are. And so to that point, you can create your own destiny. And again, you got to catch some breaks along the way. But I love sayings. I love quotes, as you probably picked up through this so far. The old one of luck is when opportunity and preparation collide. And so I think I've created my own luck. I think I'm really lucky that I've had said luck, and I'm really grateful for it. And to see how my life has evolved, right? Sometimes when my wife and I are talking about it, some of the stress we experience now is because our life has evolved so hard, or so rapidly, managing these people and this business and this involvement and all these kids, and your life just goes boom, 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 boom. It just grows rapidly. And so for us, that rapid change is almost overwhelming at times, but I don't know if I'd change anything about it, right? I love the ride. There's days it runs me down. There's days that it gives me tremendous life. And so either way, when I land in the middle, our lives are unbelievable. In this 6.5 years since we started this business, I can't wrap my head around it. What a season we've been going through. If 6.5 years is a season, at least call it a decade, but what we have encountered and what we have had happen to us is unbelievable.
Yeah, that's special.
Yeah.
So I would imagine that a fair portion of your thinking is devoted to helping the manufacturing companies that you get to work with and their people problems.
Yeah.
I'm curious, getting to spend so much time thinking and helping others through their challenges with talent, retention, recruiting, what you have learned in reflection of your own recruiting, hiring, people management, leadership within Rust Belt recruiting.
Yeah. Yeah, I think we certainly get a lot of exposure, and I have a big grin on my face because the hardest company to recruit for is ourselves. And I think other recruiters would tell you that as well, right? It's very easy for us as recruiters to sit there and tell you who you should hire and why you should hire them. But for us, it's, we have to be honest with ourselves. But seeing the way different companies do things and how they treat their people and what they offer to them, and it definitely gives us a lot of perspective, and that's valuable, right? And that's invaluable is how much exposure we get. And I love working in and on our company on a daily and weekly and full-time basis. But I'm really grateful that our company gives me almost like a dual platform, right? I get to go and see all these other businesses and meet their business leaders and develop those relationships and add value and so on and so forth. It also gives me the ability to engage in the community just more broadly. So I'm super involved with the Greater Cleveland Partnership and COSE. I'm on the board of both, and getting to involve myself with business leaders that aren't just recruiters or aren't just manufacturers, but all different kinds of businesses. I also get a forum there to connect and learn from others. And same with EO, Entrepreneurs Organization, which I'm a member of. These different entities are places where I can go and connect with other business owners and leaders and get perspective from them, again, more than just knowing other recruiting and or manufacturing companies.
Of all the things we've covered, what do you feel is most important that's left unsaid?
Yeah, I'll actually take what I just kind of mentioned there at the end. I want to celebrate GCP and COSE and the difference that they make in our communities, in Northeast Ohio as a whole. There's a lot of advocacy and a lot of community developed within the business community that we are able to connect and support each other and grow our economies. So GCP is the largest metro chamber in the United States. And COSE's membership represents the lion's share of that membership. And so small business is vibrant here in Northeast Ohio, and it's essential to the viability of the region as well. The big businesses are certainly important. But even as a small business owner myself, it's extremely rewarding to know the impact that we are able to have on companies despite our size, right? So small business makes the world go around, and is truly in the fabric of the American dream that so many people talk about. And I think that's really important to celebrate, is these businesses that get up every single day and do what they do and make what they make. That is what makes our country so great, is the opportunity to work in and around these types of businesses.
Well said.
Thank you.
All right. So I will now ask our emulated shared closing question here, and not specifically for a restaurant, but for a hidden gem in Cleveland.
Yeah. So, gosh, when I was preparing for this one, I don't have a perfect answer. I live on the west side. I think Bay Village is a beautiful community where we are. Last weekend, my wife and I found ourselves, we sneak over to the east side sometimes. We don't tell anyone because we don't want to get in trouble. I know the whole east side, west side rivalry here. But I love exploring the east side and the topography and just the beautiful communities over there. And yet I value the west side. So I'm going to go ahead and say Cleveland, Ohio is the hidden gem, right? Like, we need to tell people about ourselves more and in a positive manner and get people here, because I've had countless people visit me here and can curate a little tour for them where they see all the good things happening. And it's awesome and it's rewarding. So I know that's not an exact answer, but I really, really love this area and, have a couple spots that I like to just go hang out. My wife said that I couldn't say like riding Lime scooters is like the hidden gem, but like I will say like that's one of our favorite things to do for like a little day date is we'll get a sitter and we'll just go scooter around like Ohio City or downtown or whatever. And that's part of the fun too, is you pop in and out these nooks and crannies of neighborhoods and you zip around and probably annoy a few people with your scooters zipping by. But at the end of the day, it's a really fun thing to do. And so speaking of Ohio City, I'll go ahead and pick one. I will say it's not a hidden gem. It's a big one, is West Side Market. Oh. I think the West Side Market is so fantastic for our region and what they have to offer. And, you can wander off in a couple different directions after that, go across the street to Intro, to the coffee shop there, or go down the block to a number of good restaurants, walk across the bridge right into downtown. So we've got actually a pretty great urban core in terms of accessibility and what you can do with it. And I'm really excited about the developments that are starting to come in around that area as well.
Yeah. Yeah, that's very exciting and all resonates.
Yeah.
Well, Taylor, I just want to thank you.
Yeah.
For coming on, sharing your story.
Yeah. Well, thank you for the opportunity. You're doing great things and appreciate you telling these stories. And I'm humbled by it. And I know many of the other people who have been on here, I'm sure feel the same. So thank you for the work you do to celebrate the entrepreneurial and business leader community. It's awesome.
Wow. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
If people had anything they wanted to follow up with you about, what would be the best way? Yeah.
So LinkedIn, I'm very active on there. So you can find me, Taylor Evans, the guy with Rust Belt Recruiting. Email is taylor@rustbeltrecruiting.com. And so track me down. I'm responsive and I love to connect. So anyone is welcome to reach out.
Awesome. Thank you again.
Thanks.
That's all for this week. Thank you for listening. We'd love to hear your thoughts on today's show. So if you have any feedback, please send over an email to jeffrey@layoftheland.fm or find us on Twitter @podlayoftheland or @sternhefe, JEFE. If you or someone you know would make a good guest for our show, please reach out as well and let us know. And if you enjoy the podcast, please subscribe and leave a review on iTunes or on your preferred podcast player. Your support goes a long way to help us spread the word and continue to bring the Cleveland founders and builders we love having on the show. We'll be back here next week at the same time to map more of the land. The Lay of the Land podcast was developed in collaboration with the Up Company, LLC. At the time of this recording, unless otherwise indicated, we do not own equity or other financial interests in the company which appear on this show. All opinions expressed by podcast participants are solely their own and do not reflect the opinions of any entity which employs us. This podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be relied upon as a basis for investment decisions. Thank you for listening, and we'll talk to you next week.